Hi, this is just a quick walkthrough on how to install Android Studio. If you're in our labs, you won't have to download Android. Well, it shouldn't have to. It should be installed already, but it may be out of date, and so we may want to update it. So if you're in the labs, we'll talk a little bit about how we might go about doing that. But you probably want to consider doing this for your own personal PC, so you can follow the instructions for how to download and install Android Studio here. And again, you can do this on a Windows machine or a Mac machine or a Linux machine. It'll run on any of those devices here. We do want to get the right version of Android Studio. So if we go here or follow this link, we want to look for Android Studio version 2020.3.1. So if you see this 2020.3.1, that's the version we want. On here, it's already selecting Windows because it knows I'm on a Windows machine here. So I want to download and install this device, the version. Once we get now, if you already have Android Studio installed, you want to possibly update it. So if I'm running Android Studio here, I want this version, Android Studio Arctic Fox here, again, 2020.3.1. When you run Android Studio and if you don't see the Arctic Fox or this 2023.1, that's the one we want. Okay, once you've got Android Studio installed here, generally we want to stick, if we don't want to do updates to it, we want to stick with the same version. So if you go to settings, updates, and you want to say, generally we want to be using just the stable channel if you're doing an update, but also uncheck the automatic updates. Now, depending on what version of Android Studio and where it is, you'll see different things for that. But the next thing we want to do is also install some versions of the Android API or operating system here, and that's in the Sdk Manager. So we'll go do that. So if you're in the opening window here of this version, you have to go to the ... here and run the Sdk Manager. If you have a project actually open, window looks different, and then you have to look at the Tools menu and then go to the Sdk Manager. So the Sdk Manager is what versions of the operating system you have installed here. And we're going to be mainly using Android 12S here installed. So I want to click on that. Let's say here I'm going to install 11 just as a sample. If I click on that, I have to hit apply and it'll go walk me through the steps to download it here. Now you don't actually need these other ones installed. I do like to have an older version installed, sometimes like Android 9, so I can run older projects here. So, but you can get by with one, and you can actually get by with any of these from like 9 through 12 would be fine. Just have one installed. Now, these all take up a fair amount of space here, so you do have to watch out how much space you do. Those will use up gigs and gigs of space. Now, this SDK platform, sometimes we may have to look at the tools, and by default, these tools should be already set up and for you, and the right ones should be installed. So generally, we just have to worry about the platform and do that. And we hit apply to do that. I'm just going to hit cancel because these installs sometimes take a while to do. The other thing we want to do is the Avd Manager is our virtual device manager, and we can set up virtual machines. So if you have a Pixel, or an Android device, you can just plug it into the USB port, make sure we have debug mode, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to our first apps. But you can also run virtual machines, particularly if you have an iOS, an Apple phone here. So I can go again under the ... Avd Manager, or if I'm in a project, I can just go to Tools, Avd Manager, and I want to create a virtual device here. And this will let me create virtual devices. I suggest creating a device like either Pixel or Pixel 1, our early Pixels, Pixels 3s. So this is the phone I'm currently using. So often I like to create a device that matches my current phone here, so I can do that. So you select a device. Let's see if I can get this all on the screen here. A size, one of these device formats. Go next. And then you want to select an operating system that you already have installed here that you can wear. And so again, this should already be installed. If not, you might have to download to use that. And again, if we downloaded it before, it should be here for that. And then you hit next, and then you can create that. So again, we want to have a virtual device created for that. So that's kind of an introduction to the Android Studio and getting that started.